Good evening once more. My name is Johnny Green, and this is my attempt on my exegesis on Job 3 and a kind of a different teaching style than I normally do, but I'm looking forward to it nonetheless. So let's get in. Have you ever said the words, "I wish I was never born"? Because today's character, believe it or not, who was in the Bible, have said those words. And matter of fact, chapter 3 is full of Job saying the exact same words and how he wished that he was never born. It's hard to believe that that would be in the Bible, but that's what makes the Bible so amazing, is that it's real. Let's jump in and see who Job was before we start seeing what has brought him to this low of a life that he no longer wants to live. Job chapter 1 begins with an introduction to our character. In the land of Uz, there was lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and I have no doubt in my mind that he loved his family very much. The Bible is very honest about what Job possessed, because a lot of people link possessions to happiness. However, I do not believe that the happiness was linked to possessions in Job's life. However, you do have some fill-ins on your handout, so if you would like to fill these in, I would greatly appreciate it. It says he owned 7,000 sheep. That's a lot of bah. He had 3,000 camels. He had 500 yoke of oxen, 500 donkeys, and a large number of servants. And then it concludes that he was the greatest man among all the people of the East. It is incredible when you start and looking at all the stuff that Job had, the amount of land that he had to have also. It truly is incredible. So, keep that in mind as we are reading through all of this today, all of what God has. Well, chapter 1 and verse 6, we come into heaven and we get a insight of what a conversation was going on between God after a couple of angels showed up, and one of them being Satan. He had to be a part of this. It says, Satan answered the Lord from roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth. So God had asked him, where you come from? And he answered him. He was roaming around throughout the earth. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. Does Job fear God for nothing? Satan replied. Have you put a hedge around him? We've heard about the hedge of protection, and his household and everything he has. You have blessed the work of his hands, so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. The Lord said to Satan, very well then, everything he has is in your power, but on the man himself do not lay a finger. Then Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. I don't know, and I don't understand why God will offer up Job to Satan. This is something I still do not understand, and I'll probably go to my grave not understanding. But nevertheless, he did. And this is where we pick up in Job chapter 3. Job has sat for 7 days in silence after he has been informed of everything that he's had. The 7,000 sheep, the 3,000 camels, the 500 yoke of oxen, the 500 donkeys, and his servants, along with all of his children, have been killed. You can imagine what Job is going through, what he is feeling, as he is sitting in silence for 7 days. And here we will see why Job would say, I wish I was never born. But before we do, let me ask you a question. What would it take for you to say those words? A loss of a child, a loss of your home due to a fire, a loss of a really close pet. I'm not sure. Everyone's going to be different, but what would it take for you to say those words? Not just anger at our parents for not getting our way. Think about it, honestly. I wish I was never born. Now let's pick up in chapter 3. At last Job spoke, and he cursed the day of his birth. He said, let the day of my birth be erased, and the night that I was conceived. Let that day be turned to darkness. Let it be lost even to God on high, and let no light shine on it. Let the darkness and utter gloom claim that day for its own. Let a black cloud overshadow it, and let the darkness terrify it. Let that not be blotted off the calendar, never again to be counted among the days of the year, never again to be appear among the months. Let that not be childless, let it have no joy. Let those who are experts at cursing, whose cursing could rouse Leviathan, curse that day. Let its morning star remain dark, let it hope for light but in vain. May it never see the morning light. Curse that day for failing to shut my mother's womb, for letting me be born to see all this trouble. Why wasn't I born dead? Why didn't I die as I came from the womb? Why was I laid on my mother's lap? Why did she nurse me at her breasts? As we see here, Job is totally down, out, depressed, and as low as you can go. He said numerous times about wishing he was dead. He was wanting to curse and even bring out Leviathan. But what days did you hear that Job said that he would like to curse? What are the two main days that you heard Job say? The ones that I heard as I was going through this, he said that he would wish they would curse the day of his conception and the day of his birth. So Job totally does not want to be on this planet. He wants to be somewhere else. Let's pick up in Job chapter 3, or Job 3:13, and he continues to talk about if he would have died at birth. Had I died at birth, I would now be at peace. I would be asleep and at rest. I would rest with the world's kings and prime ministers, whose great buildings now lie in ruins. I would rest with princes and in gold and silver, whose palaces were filled with silver. Why wasn't I buried like a stillborn child, like a baby who never sees the light? For in death the wicked causes no trouble, and in the weary are at rest. Even captives are at ease in death, with no guards to curse them. Rich and poor are both there, and the slave is free from his master. When I read through those verses, what are the two things that Job really seemed like he wants above all else? To me, what I heard was rest and freedom. Job just wants to be at rest. He doesn't want to be thinking about all that has been taken from him, and he is in complete misery. He talked about even being freedom, talking about being a captive. So maybe Job is feeling like he is a slave to this, that he cannot shake it, and this is something he's going to be for the rest of his life. You can really start to feel for Job when you're reading those 6 verses, verses 13 through 19, and just feel like Job could be free from this. Verses 20 says, "Oh, why give light to those in misery and life to those who are bitter? For long for death, and it won't come. They search for death more eagerly than for hidden treasure. They're filled with joy when they finally die and rejoice when they find the grave. Why is life given to those with no future, those God has surrounded with difficulties?" You see this also. You got to ask yourself too, what would it be like to be living a life like this? To me, I think a lot of people are actually feeling, maybe not to this extent, but they are feeling the depression, and they have no idea what to do or how to turn to someone in a safe manner or without being deemed as crazy. So my question for you is, what do you do when you are feeling down? Take just a few seconds, think about that question, and fill in the blank. Because I'm telling you, hope is possible, love is possible. Friends are a great thing that you can have when you are facing depression. I would encourage you to be open and honest with the people who are around you about anything that you may be struggling with, because being alone is one of the worst things that you can be. Job is surrounded by 4 individuals inside of this encounter, and 3 of his friends are not encouraging. They do more to tear him down than they do to lift him up. His wife is even saying, "Why don't you just curse God and die?" But having people around him can still bring hope, and I would encourage you to reach out and have conversations with people so that you can go through this with someone. Verse 24, "I cannot eat for sighing, my groans pour out like water. What I always feared has happened to me. What I dreaded has come true. I have no peace, no quietness. I have no rest, only troubles come." Zig Ziglar, which is a big financial guru, has been quoted, and he has said, "Fear is something that we all face," and he has developed an acrostic. Fear can either be known as forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. And it's ultimately going to be our choice. But you must ask yourself, what is your biggest fear? And you do have the blank that I would like for you to fill it out. What do you think Job's biggest fear was? And fill in that blank. Because as we continue reading in Job, we see that he does pick himself back up. He does get his faith back in Christ or back in Yahweh, and he knows that he has not done anything to be the cause of this. But he does put his focus back where it needs to be after God comes down, and he starts asking him some rhetorical questions about, where were you when I created the foundations of this earth? Job begins to understand how amazing God truly is, or known as Yahweh. So I would encourage you to find the peace, find that quiet place. And your final feeling that you're going to have tonight is, where is that quiet place? Where can you go to find peace, to be able to pull away and to be able to live a life where you can focus on God? Where is that quiet place? And I will leave you at that, and I hope that you do take the time to fill in these blanks and to actually put some thought into the stuff that we have talked about here tonight. Thank you. Facebook Boat.